Tonight, Donald Trump does deals in Doha as the death toll mounts in Gaza. Dozens of people were killed overnight after Israeli airstrikes hit hospitals and homes. With the United Nations humanitarian chief urging world leaders to act now to prevent genocide. Here, a red carpet welcome for the US president and more billion-dollar agreements. But will he heed this message from a prominent Palestinian photojournalist?
We don't want just to talk this time. We need to finish this. We need to end this because he have the power.
Also coming up, once a US prisoner, now meeting the US president, we'll examine the changing fortunes of Syria's interim leader. Plus,
I'm impressed by that gesture.
An exclusive interview with Canada's new Prime Minister. Find out why Canadians aren't happy with the UK. And shown in court, full footage of P. Diddy beating his ex-girlfriend, plus images of so-called freak-offs. We'll be live in New York. That's all coming up on The World with me, Yalda Hakim. Good evening from Doha and welcome to our special coverage. Donald Trump would like you to focus on the billion-dollar deal signed today with the Qataris, but he's not so keen to talk about what's happening on the ground in Gaza. Today, he praised leaders here for their constructive attempts to bring the conflict to an end. But in reality, this region is no closer to peace. No aid, there's no food, no medical supplies, no shelter equipment. Nothing has been allowed into Gaza since the 2nd of March. That's 73 days. Dozens of people were killed overnight in airstrikes. And now the Israelis say they'll intensify their attacks when the US president leaves the region. We'll have a look at what's being targeted. There were at least 10 strikes on and around the European hospital in Gaza yesterday. Strikes near the Nasser hospital in Khan Yunis and further north on residential areas in Jabalia. Data from the Gaza Health Ministry suggests the past few weeks have been the deadliest since the early weeks of the war, with women, children and the elderly making up more than half of those killed in the last month. The UN says 93% of people are now facing high levels of acute food insecurity. That's the most up-to-date data that we have, and that's why we want to focus on the diplomacy and the deal-making later in the programme. Let's get started, though, with this report from our Middle East correspondent, Alistair Buncle.
Two tiny shrouds lie next to the wrapped bodies of their parents in a Gaza morgue. They were not much older than this war has been long. More bodies are put into a truck to be taken for burial. More small corpses among them. Israel says it was targeting launch sites after 3 rockets were fired into Israel on Tuesday night. Those rockets were successfully intercepted. 53 people were killed in the Israeli response, health officials have told us. 22 of them children. Mohammed shows the body of his cousin Adam and says that he died alongside his mothers and sisters.
Everyone knows what this has become for us. It's become the norm, like drinking water, hearing someone has been martyred and saying may they rest in peace. We've become numbers. It's hard to put into words.
This was the moment, caught on security cameras, that massive strikes hit the European hospital in Khan Yunis just before 6:30 yesterday afternoon. Women and children can be clearly seen walking on the road outside just seconds beforehand. We've cut out the moment the missile lands on the crowd. As the dust clears, people run for cover. There were 9 strikes in all. Israel says it was targeting Mohammed Sinwar, the Hamas leader in Gaza. They haven't confirmed whether they killed him. Hamas said he wasn't there. The IDF released this video claiming to be the tunnel under the hospital, but our investigation has found that this was actually a school 160 metres away. This morning, as they cleaned up the debris, 2 more missiles hit. This ward had children on, many suffering from cancer and waiting transfer to be treated in the UAE. The water supply to the intensive care unit is now infected and undrinkable.
So this is the part of the facility where the kids are currently waiting to be transferred out.
A British surgeon working at the hospital sent us these videos shortly after the strikes hit.
So standing outside the operating theatre, you can see the damage behind me. It's not even possible to take any cases to theatre. It is too dangerous. The theatre's been damaged and the staff, unsurprisingly, have left at the moment to try and seek some safety.
The United Nations says that Gaza is again on the brink of famine. Israel has refused to let food, water, fuel and medical supplies in since early March. There is growing international disquiet amongst Israel's allies. Emmanuel Macron has described it as shameful, and the UN is pleading for action.
For those killed and those whose voices are silenced, what more evidence do you need now? Will you act decisively to prevent genocide and to ensure respect for international humanitarian law? Or will you say instead that we did all we could?
Israel has said that it plans to force all 2 million Gazans into a smaller area in the south and then conquer and occupy Gaza. They say the massive new offensive will begin when Donald Trump leaves the Middle East. That's in 2 days' time. Alistair Bunkle, Sky News in Jerusalem.
Well, there had been hopes of a diplomatic breakthrough on Gaza here in Doha. After all, this is where the first ceasefire between Israel and Hamas was announced. But tonight, there appears to be no signs of progress. Instead, what we've seen is Donald Trump pivot to another issue in the Middle East. That, of course, is Syria. He's offered its new president an olive branch by lifting the economic sanctions that held the country back during the Assad regime. Well, Mark Stone has this report.
If there is an image to define this trip so far, well, this is it. A surprise for sure, and such a reflection of the quirks of history. Because Ahmed al-Shara is now the Syrian president. But he was an Islamist commander, aligned to al-Qaeda, a militant who fought the Americans in Iraq, jailed by them in the notorious Abu Ghraib prison. There was no sound on the images released, and so we don't know what they said, but as an indication of what seems uncharacteristically to be Donald Trump's message here of cooperation, opportunity, looking forward, it had all that.
You have to stay down. You have to stay down. I'm working with you.
There is a tussle on this trip.
He has to stand. Down.
To decipher what the American president is up to here. Because at face value, we're getting a fresh vision of his foreign policy worldview. And it is at odds with Trump, the disruptor. The morning meeting with Gulf Arab leaders was about investment first, but under it, geopolitical cooperation. The two go side by side here.
And I think
And after the opulence and business deals of day one, it was more about the diplomacy on day two. A nuclear deal with Iran, maybe, and Israel, Gaza.
In Gaza, my administration shares the hope of so many in this region for future of safety and dignity of the Palestinian people. But that cannot happen as long as Gaza's leaders take delight in raping, torturing, and murdering innocent people. Can't have it. I greatly appreciate the constructive role that the leaders in this room have played in trying to bring the terrible conflict to an end.
That was it, though, publicly at least, on Gaza, the elephant in every gold-gilded room he went to. The farewell from the Saudi Crown Prince reflected the closeness of this relationship, the trappings of power shared. On the flight to Qatar, a few words on the meeting which defined the day.
How did you find the Syrian president?
Great. Great. I think very good. Young, attractive guy, tough guy. You know, strong pass. Very strong pass fighter.
Does that worry you at all?
He's got a real shot at pulling it together.
And then jet escorts again, this time above the Persian Gulf. And from Air Force One, he arrived into Doha, into the hands of the royal family who want to give him a new plane. And he hasn't just brushed aside the conflicts of interest, he's doubled down here, insisting it is all fine. At the Emir's palace, a sword dance, camels and Arabian horses to greet a motorcade led by Tesla Cybertrucks. Qatar hitting all the right buttons for the American president. But beyond all that, this leg of the trip is less about trade and about money and more about geopolitics, because Qatar has proved itself to be a country that's capable of doing delicate diplomatic deals in a way that few other countries can. On Gaza, Qatar has been the intermediary between the Americans and the Israelis on one side and Hamas on the other. The hostage negotiations have been driven from here. Hamas has a political office here. And Trump's chief negotiator, Steve Witkoff, he is here too. You have to wonder what progress on ceasefire talks are behind this hug. We don't know, because it was all about the decor here.
As a construction person, I'm seeing perfect marble. This is what they call perfecto.
Then a hint on another challenge and the prospect of a Zelensky-Putin meeting this week.
I know you're very much involved in helping us in other regions, like what's happening with Russia, Ukraine, etc. And I think we're having some pretty good news coming out of there today and maybe tomorrow and maybe Friday, frankly. But we'll see about that.
The evening, as it was last night, was a state dinner for the American president and his guests. Mark Stone, Sky News, in Doha.
Well, joining me now live is Dr. Majed Al-Ansari, a spokesperson for Qatar's foreign ministry. Dr. Majed, thank you very much for joining us here on the program. So you would classify the events today, the pomp and ceremony, a success. But Qatar has also been at the heart of the ceasefire negotiations between Hamas and Israel. Have there been discussions, any kind of pressure behind the scenes between the Emir and President Trump? We also saw Steve Witkoff here to try and put this at the top of the agenda.
Well, Yalda, you know, for us Qataris, this is a historic visit. It's the first ever official visit for a U.S. president, a state visit for a U.S. president in Qatar. So we look at this as an opportunity not only to renew our strategic partnership with the U.S., but also to put on the table a lot of the issues and use this as a momentum builder for a lot of the issues that we want to talk about, you know, Syria, Gaza, and everything else. And you have seen the momentum, the positive momentum that was created with Idan Alexander back with his family, and Steve Witkoff spending 2 days here in Doha, talking to the Israeli delegation and to hostage families. So there's a new spirit that I can characterize it in the talks. Obviously, it's too early. We don't want to jinx it, as you know, Yalda. But we are quite, you know, optimistic when it comes to Mr. Trump's and President Trump's visit here and the effect it will have on peace in the region. You know, you heard President Trump and His Highness the Emir this morning say that, you know, both men are men of peace and they have peace in their eyesight, and that's what they want to do in the region.
The Emir, as you say, praised Donald Trump and described him as a man of peace. The Emir has also in the past described the situation in Gaza as collective genocide. Has he been able to convince Donald Trump that peace needs to come, and it needs to come now?
I think President Trump has said it very clearly that he doesn't believe in war as a way of solving conflict. Since coming to office, he has embarked on so many talks and dialogue with a lot of adversaries and other parties around the world to bring about peace. And we are very hopeful that a lot of these efforts will come to fruition very, very soon with the help of Qatar and our partners here in the region and abroad, whether it be in Gaza, in Syria, between Russia and Ukraine, Iran. All of these issues are issues that we see positive momentum coming from the U.S. administration. And therefore, I think during the talks today, obviously the issue of Gaza took a very important location within these talks, along with the economic and investment discussions.
Do you think, though, that President Trump got the message in terms of how the Emir feels about this situation?
You know, Yalda, even before coming to the White House and assuming his role as president, it was his efforts through Steve Witkoff that helped bring about the ceasefire, the first ceasefire since 2023. So we are convinced that President Trump wants peace and that he can achieve peace, and that this is what he's working on right now. And you have seen as the media reports have confirmed. The meeting between Steve Witkoff and the Israeli delegation is the first in a while, and it's a positive sign that Mr. Witkoff is convinced that something is on the horizon, and we are working with them very closely on it.
Dr. Majed, I have to ask you, there's been a lot of controversy around the so-called palace in the sky that many people have talked about. This $400 million aircraft that Qatar is allegedly, and Donald Trump has confirmed, gifting Donald Trump. Can you see why there is this controversy about a foreign state giving this sort of gift to the U.S. president?
You know, Yalda, the partnership between the United States on the defense level has always been very deep and very entrenched. This is why 10,000 U.S. servicemen and women, more than 10,000 U.S. servicemen and women serve here in Doha. Al Udeid airspace with the burden sharing that Qatar has embarked on is renewed, and we are working on a new plan for Al Udeid airbase. So it's a multifaceted relationship on the defense side. So this issue is also, it's talks between the DOD and MOD, which is our Ministry of Defense.
President Trump has said, I happily take this. Why would I pay for it?
I mean, as I said, these talks are going between lawyers right now and between legal teams to make sure that it's all above board, and it is part of the partnership, as I said, on the defense side. And we are a very important ally and friend. And, you know, we have been classified as a major non-NATO ally by the United States, and therefore we are always there to help with the U.S. whenever there is a need, especially when it comes to the security and defense side.
And in terms of the security defense side, arms sales, what is it that Qatar wants and needs most?
No, as you know, that we have secured today a number of deals when it comes to weapons acquisition. We had the deal over the MQ-9Bs, which is certainly not a small deal. You know, very important for us when it comes to unmanned aircrafts. We had the FS-LEDs, the counter UAV system, and we are working with the U.S. very deeply. You know, as I said, you have the Al Udeid airspace here, CENTCOM is here. We have been working in tandem with the U.S. military for decades now, and I don't think that there are pending issues between both militaries, but there is always room for expansion that we are working on.
Dr. Majed, thank you so much for joining us here on the program.
My pleasure.
Well, let's focus some more now on Gaza, and the Palestinian photojournalist Motaz Azaiza documented the devastation and huge loss of life in Gaza in the early months of the war. Speaking to me today, Motaz urged President Trump to ramp up diplomatic pressure on Israel and deliver on his promise to stop the war in Gaza. Have a listen.
We don't want just to talk this time. We need to finish this. We need to end this, because he have the power. He can affect on Israel, as all the funds, all the money, all the weapons coming from the U.S. to Israel to support them in general, and specifically in Israel using these weapons against us and occupying our lands by the power that they get from the U.S. So he can solve this, because if he's thinking or he's believing he wants peace in the Middle East, he should focus on finding a solution. At least the two-state solution, so we could have kind of peace in the Middle East, because Palestinian cause, it's the main cause now in that area and globally. And without peace for Palestinians, there will be no peace for anyone.
We heard today from the UN humanitarian chief, Tom Fletcher, saying that in order to prevent genocide, the world needs to act now, including allowing for much-needed humanitarian aid to enter Gaza. We're seeing daily bombardment. We know that the death toll from the aerial bombardment and the strikes that took place yesterday has now reached over 80 people. What are you hearing from friends, family, people you know who are still in Gaza today?
People there are very desperate. People don't know what to do. The people who are in Gaza still, they are suffering. There's a famine. There's no food. Everything is so expensive. Gaza now is more expensive than London, where I am here. Everything is expensive. There's no safety. There's no electricity. There's no food, and everyone knows this. So there's no need for keep repeating the same words. Even the people who left from Gaza are very desperate. They are still connected to Gaza. They don't know what to do. People are like spending a lot of money outside without any income for them. People inside even if you have money, there's nothing to buy. There is no clean water, there is no medicine. Israel, and every second they are killing people. Not every minute, no, every second there is people losing their lives in Gaza.
How do you think this will all end? Are you worried that ultimately when Donald Trump says that he wants to turn Gaza into the Riviera of the Middle East and move Gazans from there, are you worried that actually that could become a reality given the direction in which the Israeli government is currently going and the sorts of things that the United States and this particular administration is saying?
Okay, if you look to the history, Israel stole our lands and stole a land that they don't have the right in, and they become their land, and they're trying to push Palestinians out from occupied Palestine every day. So in this crazy world where you have the power, where you have the money, and all what's happening for us because we don't have the power, we don't have the money. So if we were having some kind of power, you will have more respect in this world. He may do it, I don't know. I'm not sure about how he think, but I don't see him. I don't see like his word on the ground nowadays, as he said that he's gonna stop the war. He's gonna stop Israel from like the massive airstrikes, but he didn't.
That's photojournalist Motaz Azaiza talking to me there a little earlier. Let's bring in my next guest, Danon, Israel's ambassador to the United Nations. Ambassador Danon, thank you very much for joining us here on the program. I just want to begin by playing you these words from the UN's humanitarian chief, Tom Fletcher. Let's just have a listen.
We have briefed this council in great detail on the extensive civilian harm that we witness daily. Death, injury, destruction, hunger, disease, torture, other cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment, repeated displacement on a large scale. We have described the deliberate obstruction of aid operations and the systematic dismantling of Palestinian life and that which sustains it in Gaza. This degradation of international law is corrosive and infectious. It is undermining decades of progress on rules to protect civilians from inhumanity and the violent and lawless among us who act with impunity.
That was Tom Fletcher. And Ambassador Danon, he goes on to say, stop the 21st century atrocity in Gaza. Will you act now decisively to prevent genocide in Gaza and to ensure respect for international humanitarian law? I just want to get your reaction to what Tom Fletcher was saying.
Yalda, I was there yesterday at the Security Council, and I heard Mr. Fletcher, and I told him very directly, we are in this war because of Hamas, period. If you want to blame somebody, blame Hamas for all the suffering both in Israel and in Gaza. This war will not end while we have hostages in Gaza. We are not going to leave behind 58 hostages and move on. The sooner the world will understand that, maybe we can move forward for something else. But expecting Israel to decide that that's it, we forget about the hostages, it's just not going to happen. We will continue this war until Hamas will be defeated.
Ambassador Danon, I'm not talking about Hamas, a terrorist organization. I am talking about you, the state of Israel, as a responsible actor. For the last 19 months, the world has been watching the way that you have prosecuted this conflict, the way that aid has been prevented from reaching the most needy. In the last 2 months, 73 days, we have seen that there has been no aid that has entered Gaza. So while you can deflect and say that this is Hamas's responsibility, at the end of the day, you are the governing power in Gaza. You have a responsibility to ensure that there is no famine and starvation in Gaza, which is what the world, including your allies and partners, are now accusing you of. And it's gone beyond accusation. They are saying that they are seeing it in real time take place.
So the only starvation in Gaza is the starvation of the hostages. We have heard the testimony of Idan Alexander, who came out 2 days ago, about the way he was treated in a cage, chained by his feet and hands, starving to death. So the only starvation is of the hostages. And it's very simple. You know, you can go on and blame Israel for everything. But you have to make it very simple. As long as we have hostages in Gaza, we will not stop. We will bring them back home. They will abducted from Israel, and they will come back to Israel.
Ambassador Danon, I just want to show this COGAT graph from the last few months. It stops at the end of February. We'll just get it up on our screen, where you can see there is now no record of any aid entering Gaza. Humanitarians across the globe are saying that Israel continues to deny them access into Gaza and continues to deny any aid into Gaza, including Cindy McCain, the chief of the World Food Programme. Just your reaction and response to that, because we can talk about the hostages in a moment and we can talk about Hamas's actions, but I am asking you about the aid and the fact that you are the governing body in Gaza and there is now no food for people in the Strip.
First of all, I beg to differ with your assessments. You know, yesterday I showed at the Security Council that the IPC report said that in Gaza they are facing famine in the future. There is enough food because during the ceasefire we allowed tons of supply to come into Gaza. But I'm not telling you that it's easy to be in Gaza. But if you want to blame somebody, blame Hamas. It's very easy. They just need to release the hostages, lay the weapons, and then it's over. But expecting us now to listen to the cries of the people of Gaza and close our ears for the cries of the hostages and their families, it will not happen. We hear the families and we are telling the families we are with you.
It is your conflict, though. I mean, you're saying you're not going to focus on the cries of the people in Gaza, but are you now saying that you admit that it's not your responsibility to ensure that aid gets into Gaza, that people like Tom Fletcher, Cindy McCain, leading global humanitarians who are saying that there is no aid getting into the Strip and Israel is not allowing it, that it doesn't matter what they think, you're going to continue to prosecute your war? That is the policy of Israel now?
Well, unfortunately, you have a few players who like to speak a lot about humanitarian issues in Gaza. But if you allow me for 1 minute, you know, the U.S. has put out a plan to support Gaza with humanitarian help. You know, even before the plan was presented, it was denied by the UN and some agencies. I'm happy that there are NGOs who will cooperate with that. But I ask myself, if they claim that there is a problem, why they don't engage with the US about their plan, about their ideas to provide humanitarian aid into Gaza? And immediately they said, we will not cooperate with that, we will not take part of that. That's hypocrisy. That is hypocrisy at the United Nations.
As you say, they have rejected that because for the last 19 months, Israel continues to be accused of preventing aid trucks from entering the Strip. I just want to ask you about a number of other things, including systematic human rights abuses that we've been seeing in Gaza. Sky News did an investigation about a number of paramedics who were killed and then buried in shallow land in Gaza alongside their vehicles. Israel's own internal investigation, despite repeated claims that these were Hamas militants, it was discovered that these were in fact paramedics. Your response to that?
Well, first, I will be very happy to see when the next Sky report about human rights abuse of Hamas in Gaza. You know, every day they execute their own people, and they have been molesting
Ambassador
the
Danon, Ambassador, I'm asking about Israel's
I will get to that, but
here.
I will be very happy to see.
I know, but you can. We can talk about Hamas, and we are conducting an interview with Hamas
today,
tomorrow, and we will hold Hamas accountable. But I want to ask about these paramedics. These 15 paramedics who were not Hamas militants, and we have continued to see the targeting of hospitals and the targeting of paramedics by Israel, who is supposed to be a responsible state actor. So comparing yourself to Hamas, who, as you say, operates as a terrorist organization, when you are supposed to be a democratic state, a responsible actor, you are not the same as Hamas, and you shouldn't compare yourself to Hamas. And I'm asking for your reaction and response to the killing of these 15 paramedics.
But I will answer that. I wasn't comparing Israel. I would just say it's about time that Sky News will do a report about what Hamas is doing to the people in Gaza. Now, regarding your question, I can tell you that we are doing our best to minimize civilian casualties. But when Hamas is hiding in hospitals, when Hamas is using those NGOs as human shields, that's unfortunate. And if we make a mistake, and sometimes we do make mistakes, we take responsibility for that, and we acknowledge that. But we are doing everything we can to minimize casualties of people who are not involved with terrorist organizations. But let's acknowledge it. You know, only yesterday we heard a report about attack of Hamas leadership in Gaza. Why they were hiding in a hospital? Why they were hiding in a tunnel beneath a hospital?
And I want to get to that incident that took place yesterday. But with this particular incident with the paramedics, it wasn't until footage emerged. Israel continued to deny that these were innocent paramedics. You said that they were, in fact, Hamas militants. It wasn't until footage emerged that Israel then said it would conduct an internal investigation. And the findings of that investigation has not concluded that these were Hamas militants, even though the paramedics say they alerted the IDF of who they were. In terms of yesterday's attack, I just want to show you some footage that was released by the IDF. Israeli forces say that they were targeting, as you say, a Hamas command and control center buried underneath the European hospital. You can see what the IDF says are tunnels outlined there in red. And this is footage, Ambassador, that the IDF itself has put out. Now, Sky News has confirmed the footage actually shows the Isan al-Agha school, which is about 160 meters away. So this is the courtyard of a school and not, in fact, the command and control center of Hamas.
So, you know, because you sent me that information, I checked it with our people on the ground. And what we found out that in this case, yes, you had infrastructure of tunnels beneath the hospital, but it wasn't only beneath the hospital. It was stretched to other areas in that region. And that's why, you know, it wasn't only under the hospital. But you should ask yourself, why under almost every hospital in Gaza, you have a command center of Hamas? You know, and that's the question we should ask ourselves.
Sir, I just want to tell you what our experts have told us. Those tunnels that you're talking about, the dark shapes highlighted there on the screen, the markings were caused by water, not tunnels, because these are drainage systems. And so the dark shades that you're talking about, which Israel claims to be tunnels, are in fact caused by water because of a drainage system.
Well, I'm not familiar with your experts, but I can tell you that, Yalda, that today, in Gaza, you have underground system bigger than the tube in London and the subway in New York City combined. It's a huge infrastructure of tunnels. All the dollar that was spent over the years in Gaza went to the tunnels. And that's unfortunate. And we are determined it will not be that case. The future of Gaza will be without Hamas, without tunnels, and hopefully the money will be invested in building hospitals and schools and not a network of tunnels.
Ambassador, so can I confirm that the video that the IDF has put out to say was the European hospital and that there was a tunnel system under there was in fact wrong?
Absolutely not. I told you earlier, we checked it and we saw tunnels that started in the hospital and went to other areas in the surrounding area of the hospital.
Well, our experts say that this is, in fact, the courtyard of a school and not a command and control center. And like I said, those tunnels that you point to are, in fact, the dark marks were caused by water because of a drainage system. So would you say then and admit that this was, in fact, a mistake by the IDF?
Absolutely not. And I think we will be able to confirm, you know, some of the individuals who we were able to eliminate in this operation. And you will ask yourself, it was like a school, why you have leaders of the Hamas terrorist organization hiding beneath a school, beneath a hospital. You know, they're taking advantage of those places, but we are determined to hunt them down everywhere.
I'm sorry, you're not answering my question. The footage put out by the IDF, they claimed that it was the tunnel and command and control center underneath the European hospital. The footage, in fact, is of a school. Did the IDF put out the wrong footage or they got it wrong?
No, so I answered you. Maybe you are not happy with the answer I'm giving you, but it wasn't only the hospital itself. The surrounding of the hospital, you have other infrastructure of Hamas. You have tunnels connecting those infrastructure into the hospital. And it's not the first time that we see that the hospital itself is the headquarters, and in facilities around the hospital, you have command centers of Hamas.
Okay, Ambassador Danon, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much for joining us here on the program.
Thank you very much.
I just want to turn your attention now to Canada. In an exclusive interview with Sky News, the Prime Minister Mark Carney told us Canadians weren't impressed by the UK's decision to offer an unprecedented second state visit to the US, President Donald Trump. The invitation from the King and handed over to Trump in the Oval Office by Sir Keir Starmer came at what Mr. Carney said was a difficult moment for his country. At the time, President Trump was vocally calling for Canada to become the 51st state. Now, my colleague Samantha Washington sat down with Mr. Carney and is live in Ottawa tonight. Samantha, over to you.
Hello there. Good evening to you, Yalda, from here downtown in Ottawa. Ottawa is going to be the host to the King and Queen, who are coming out here in just under 2 weeks' time to open Parliament. They were asked to do so by the new Prime Minister, Mark Carney, who, of course, is known to UK viewers because he was, of course, the Bank of England governor, a political outsider. He came back to Canada after his tenure at the Bank of England and decided to throw his hat in the ring upon the resignation of Justin Trudeau. He won that election just under 2 weeks ago and has given Sky News his first significant interview since winning that election. Plenty, as you can imagine, to talk to him about. He is, of course, now a G7 world leader. One of the things that he campaigned on, Yalda, as you were saying there, is standing up to Donald Trump, who was threatening the sovereignty of Canada, something that has really riled the Canadian electorate here and has been something that has really coalesced behind the campaign of Mark Carney. So I started off by talking to him about what the purpose of that visit was, and also because the King is head of state, he is of course also head of state in the UK, as you know, and what was the tension between those dual purposes, and did that effectively create a conflict between Commonwealth allies? This is what he had to say.
To be frank, they weren't impressed by that gesture. Quite simply, given the circumstance. It was at a time when we were being quite clear. Some of us were being quite clear about the issues around sovereignty. I was not yet Prime Minister, but I was being clear on the campaign trail, and it cut across some of those messages.
So do you personally think that a state visit to the UK for President Trump is appropriate, given that backdrop?
Well, that's a judgment for the government of the United Kingdom and the Palace.
But I'm sure you have an opinion on it.
Well, you reference, I have an opinion on many things, some of which I keep to myself.
Well, I'm inviting you to share it.
That's very kind. You mentioned that it's unprecedented for a second state visit. President Trump is also unprecedented in having an interregnum between becoming president again, so both 45th and 47th president. So there are many unique factors, and I'd leave the diplomacy to the UK government.
Let's talk about the art of the deal, if we may. Keir Starmer befriended Donald Trump. We talked about his time in the Oval Office. He was the first to get an agreement over the line, the big announcement from President Trump. Now even China has some kind of partial deal. Why hasn't Canada got one yet?
Well, by the standards of the Chinese deal, we have a deal. We've had one for a while. I don't view I view the Chinese deal as progress, but the Americans have already lowered tariffs on Canadian goods. They have a series of tariffs. We probably don't have time to go through, but quite a substantial lowering of tariffs on a number of goods. And they've also uniquely, because we have USMCA, are allowing in a variety of goods now on a tariff-free basis. So that has happened already. So on the context of these broader, quote, deals, we're actually
quote deals. You sound like you're.
Well, they're but look, the Chinese situation. Well, no, the Chinese situation is a 90-day pause. It was an 89-day pause now. So that's different than a trade deal, so that's the first point I'd make. So there has been some progress there, but the reality is that the meeting, which was only a week ago, that the president and I had, was the first time we really were sitting down and starting broader discussions. And recall as well that the UK is not, China is not, Europe is not, Canada is the largest client of the United States. We are their largest trading partner. Okay, so that is the big deal. That is the deal that will move things.
Yes.
And there are many factors that will influence it, and we've just started.
But Starmer did get an agreement on steel, aluminium and cars. Wouldn't Canadian businesses in those sectors welcome that?
Well, we don't want an agreement that allows us to ship 100,000 cars to the United States when we ship over 1.5 million cars to the United States. So we are in a different order of magnitude in terms of integration and scale of the relationship than the United Kingdom, with all due respect. It's a totally different world. Okay. The level of trade with the world's largest economy. We are the largest trading partner of the world's largest economy.
That was Mark Carney there. And Sam, fascinating conversation, although just towards the end there, he appeared to be downplaying on some level the UK and US trade deal.
Yeah, that was my read as well, Yalda. I think he was being careful. Of course, the UK was the first place that he went to visit when he was first became Prime Minister, when he won the Liberal leadership, very close allies with the UK. So I think he didn't want to say anything too specific that was rude about what the UK had managed to achieve. But I think his point was that, you know, these countries who are going to the Oval Office and they're acting triumphant about what they're coming away with in terms of a piece of paper. I think he's saying, actually, you know what, we're going to wait. I don't really like the look of those things that people are coming away with. I mean, they're second best solutions, if that, which effectively is suggesting that the US has won in these kind of trade wars. He also makes the point that the Canadian economy is, of course, far more integrated into the US economy, so he really needs to take his time to hammer something out. But it is yet another sign, Yalda, that the US has just upended what has been a sort of, world rules-based system, and the G7 next month is going to be key, I think, for the reconfiguration of those systems and the formation of new trading alliances. And I think Mr. Carney is going to be very keen to get some of those, to get some momentum behind some of those, to get them done quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. And Sam, great interview. You can watch more of that on our website. Thanks so much for joining us there from Ottawa. Now, before we go to the rest of the day's news, let me just bring you a bit of an update. Earlier this week, as we were traveling from London to Riyadh to get to Saudi Arabia for Donald Trump's trip there, he urged Volodymyr Zelensky to meet face-to-face with Vladimir Putin, and Volodymyr Zelensky, the Ukrainian president, took that challenge up and said, I will come to Turkey and I will sit with you and let's strike this deal. Let's bring an end to the bloodshed. So there's been a lot of conversation over the last few days whether President Trump would go to Turkey, whether Vladimir Putin would go to Turkey. Certainly, Volodymyr Zelensky said that he would be there, and some parts of the U.S. Delegation. We're now getting news, first of all, that President Trump will not be going to Turkey. And second of all, it appears that Vladimir Putin has released and drawn up his list of delegates, and his name is not on that list either. So we'll have to wait and see how this actually pans out. But just in breaking news now, Donald Trump will not be going to Turkey. He will be leaving Doha and heading to Abu Dhabi, to the United Arab Emirates. He will not be going on to Turkey for what would have been potential talks between Volodymyr Zelensky and Vladimir Putin. And Vladimir Putin has, in the last few minutes, put out a list of delegates, and his name is not in that list. So it doesn't appear at this stage that Vladimir Putin will be going to Turkey to hold any kind of ceasefire talks or discuss any pathway to peace and an ending of the war in Ukraine. As soon as we get more information on that development, we will be bringing that to you. And in a moment, I will also be speaking to our correspondent, Mark Stone, who will be following and who is following all of those developments. Now let's take you to New York, and the jury in the sex trafficking trial of music mogul Sean Combs, also known as Diddy, has been shown the full unedited video of him attacking his former partner Cassie Ventura in an LA hotel in 2016. There was also further testimony from Miss Ventura, who described being pressured into sex with paid sex workers while Combs watched on and gave directions. Well, let's bring in our Martha Kellner, who is joining us from outside the court in New York. And Martha, another really difficult day in court with some of the evidence that has been coming out and some of the testimony.
Yeah, very difficult, Yalda, and difficult for Cassie Ventura, the prosecution's star witness, who was on the stand testifying for a second day. At times, she broke down crying as she recounted incidents that she said happened during her more than 10-year relationship with Sean Diddy Combs. Her direct examination has finished. She will return for cross-examination when Combs' defence lawyers will be given the opportunity to interrogate her testimony tomorrow morning. But perhaps the most disturbing incident of all that she recounted was saved for the final portion of her evidence. She ended her relationship with Sean Combs in 2018. After the relationship had ended, she said that they went out to a restaurant in Malibu, California, to have what she said she thought would be a closure conversation. She said that he'd seemed happy and playful during that dinner, and then he offered to drive her home back to her apartment. She then took a long pause before she detailed what happened next. She said that Combs raped her in her living room. She said, "I went inside my apartment. He came in and raped me on the living room floor. I remember crying and saying no. It was fast. His eyes were black. He wasn't himself. It was like somebody taking something from you. I cried, and when I said no, he finished and got up and left." She was asked by the government's prosecutor why she decided to testify against Combs in this criminal case. She responded, "I can't carry this anymore. The shame, the guilt, what's right and what's wrong is wrong. People aren't disposable." She then confirmed that she'd also reached a $20 million settlement with Sean Combs in their civil lawsuit. But of course, this criminal case has much higher stakes for the music mogul.
Yeah, and Martha, images of so-called freak-offs played today in court as well.
Yeah, the court fell silent as still images of these so-called freak-offs. These were the drug-fueled sex parties in which Cassie Ventura says that Sean Combs forced her to take drugs, forced her to have sex with male prostitutes. She said these freak-offs happened hundreds of times during their relationship. The still images were shown, the jury given the opportunity to see them. Cassie clearly very emotional as those images were being shown in court. There was also a video played of a now infamous violent incident in a hotel room in Los Angeles in 2016, in which Combs dragged Cassie along the corridor. He then appeared to throw a vase at her. You can see those images there of Combs dragging Cassie. She then runs away. He follows her back, clearly furious. She was apparently attempting to leave one of these freak-offs before he'd given her permission to do so. He then throws a vase in her direction. A security guard then turns up on the scene, alerted by the noise and the disturbance from other guests. The security guard testified yesterday, saying that Sean Combs had attempted to bribe him, handing him a wad of notes. You can see there him throwing the vase towards Cassie. She said that she wasn't hurt by the bars, but that she did suffer a split lip and blacked eyes. And in fact, throughout the first 2 days of her testimony, she paints a picture of living in fear of Sean Combs.
Martha, thank you so much for bringing us up to date there from New York. Now, President Trump's whistle-stop tour of the Middle East has seen him meet with a host of world leaders, from Mohammed bin Salman to the Emir of Qatar. There was a possibility he could be heading to Istanbul for talks on Ukraine. In the past few minutes, there have been reports that Mr. Trump will not attend, and neither will Vladimir Putin. Well, let's speak tonight with our international affairs editor, Dominic Waghorn, who joins us from Kiev. Our Europe correspondent, Adam Parsons, is in Istanbul. Our Moscow correspondent, Ivor Bennett, is in Moscow. And with me here is our Mark Stone, following all of the developments. Ivor, I might come to you first, because a list of delegations was released by the Kremlin, and Vladimir Putin's name was not on there. I mean, there's been a lot of speculation all week. Will he or will he not come? It appears that for now he won't.
That's right, Yalda. It appears he won't. It's not for definite, but it appears he won't because his name is not on the list. The Kremlin has just published the names who will be in its delegation, quite literally at the 11th hour, before these talks are set to begin tomorrow in Istanbul. And his name's not on the list. The four names who are on the list are Vladimir Medinsky, a presidential aide, Mikhail Galuzin, a deputy foreign minister here, Igor Kostyakov, who is the head of Russian military intelligence, and then there's a deputy minister of defense, Alexander Fomin. Now, if you don't know who any of those people are, I think that's part of the point. This is not Vladimir Putin's top team. It is not his foreign minister, Sergei Lavrov, or any of his other heavyweights like Yuri Ushakov, who's been a key player in the talks with the US over the past couple of months. This is a much more junior contingent, which is designed, I think, to try and humiliate Volodymyr Zelensky, who's been saying all week that he's prepared to go to Istanbul, and he's been calling on Vladimir Putin to come. But as we know, Vladimir Putin is not someone who responds kindly to ultimatums or the demands of others. He likes to be the one in charge. And so I can't say I'm that surprised that it appears he's not going. Giving a list like this at this very late stage is an attempt to own the agenda. But I think the question is, how is Donald Trump going to react to all this? He stuck his neck out earlier this week, saying that he would be prepared to go to Istanbul if Vladimir Putin goes. Now it appears he's not. Well, that, I think, leaves Donald Trump looking like he's in a bit of a weak position, actually.
Yeah, just in the last few minutes, we've heard that Donald Trump is not going. So clearly he was, made aware that Vladimir Putin had no intention of going and put out that statement, I guess, in conjunction with what we saw there from the list. Let's go straight to our Dominic Waghorn, who joins us from Kiev. And Dom, I mean, Vladimir Putin has made his intentions clear. He's sending a junior delegation. I guess the question is, will Volodymyr Zelensky now go? He also stuck his neck out and said, I'm ready to go. I'll sit face to face with Putin.
Yeah, so he said he threw down the gauntlet to the Russian leader, saying when the Russian leader said he wanted to have talks between Russia and Ukraine, Zelensky said, well, I'm going to go personally. I'll wait for you there, raising the stakes. And he's confirmed that he will do that. He's going to go in person to Ankara to meet the Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, and he will wait for Vladimir Putin. I mean, he and his supporters, and I think probably his allies, will not see this as humiliation at all. They'll say that this is showing up Vladimir Putin in his true colours, not wanting peace, not taking the opportunity that he has been encouraged to take by Zelensky, but also by President Trump, to go and meet Zelensky and give peace a chance. And in a sense, also, as I was saying there, it does make Trump look rather weak because he waited for the news that Putin isn't going. He could still surprise us and end up going there, of course, but Trump, I think will look to some people at least like Putin's lackey. If Putin's not going, then Trump's not going either. I think we shouldn't get overexcited about the possibility of this meeting happening or achieving anything anyway. Even if it were to achieve a 30-day ceasefire, the Russians never respect those ceasefires. But also, if it led to some kind of diplomatic process, it would be mediated by Americans who do seem to be completely deluded and naive about what they're dealing with here. We heard from Stephen Witkoff, who is the former golfing partner of Donald Trump, who's been elevated to this supreme position of negotiator, giving an interview where he gave no acknowledgement at all of the fact that Russia is the aggressor in this, the invader, and that Putin has not rowed back from any of his genocidal war aims. So, you know, even were it to happen, we shouldn't be, I think, overexcited about the possibilities of success.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go straight to our Adam Parsons. Adam, I've got about a minute or so left. I guess the question is, you know, this will go ahead. It just won't be at the scale and you know, with the kind of leaders that we thought might turn up.
Well, we don't know. That's the extraordinary thing about this. Normally, diplomacy at this level is so choreographed. The fact is, tomorrow we're expecting Erdogan and Zelensky to sit in Ankara. And then, according to some diplomatic contacts, they still think there is a chance that if talks between the Ukrainians and the Russians progress, that Putin could still be here, not tomorrow, but on Friday. And if that happens, they think there could be a domino effect, and then Trump comes in. So there is a balance here, Yalda, that this could either be a complete damp squid, another kind of false step, or it could be a step towards something quite consequential.
Yeah, absolutely. Adam, as you say, we really don't know at this stage, and it feels like perhaps the next 24 hours, 48 hours will be critical, and we'll learn much more. But that's it from the team and me here from Doha. Good night.